Dr. Paul, can you tell us about different types of cannabis? Which types are used in treatment of cancer or other diseases? Which type of cannabis would you recommend? And also, is there any side effects or overdose?
I'll start with the first part of that question first. There are hundreds of different strains of cannabis, but each one will have an individual cannabinoid profile, as it's called, with an amount of THC and cannabidiol, CBD, and cannabinol, CBN, and there's over 100 cannabinoids within the cannabis plant. But the most abundant one is tetrahydrocannabinol, which is present as an acid, and cannabidiol, which is also present as an acid. When cannabis is heated up, those acids convert to the neutral compound, which is receptor active. So you wouldn't just take a cannabis bud off the plant and eat it, because you won't get the receptor cannabis effect. It has to be what's called decarboxylated, activated by heat first. So a lot of people using cannabis therapeutically are unaware of this, but it's very important to know that THC has to be activated before you can take it orally or use it as a topical. Okay. Mm-hmm. But getting back to your question on different types of cannabis, there are two major subspecies of cannabis, indica and sativa. Indicas are more highly indicated for people in chronic pain or with cancer or with MS than are sativas. Sativas tend to be more stimulatory, indicas more sedative. So particularly if you use them in oral dosing, an indica would be preferred for sleep and for relaxation and for rest. So someone with cancer, that's recommended. You want to rest and sleep and so on. Getting back to the concentration of THC, that is highest in what is called, I believe in Macedonia you call it skunk, is the nickname for high THC grade cannabis. Growing all over Macedonia is what's called the hemp plant, which indeed is the same species of cannabis, only it has a different cannabinoid profile. It has a high concentration of CBD, cannabidiol, whereas the skunk will have a high concentration of THC. If you breed the two, you get what I call a 50-50, equal THC and CBD. But there's nothing in between. There's no 60-40 THC or CBD ratios. What I'm referring to is the amount of THC and CBD in an individual cannabis strain. So the hemp has high CBD, which is highly indicated for seizure disorder, autism, epilepsy, and it's a powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. THC is the psychoactive cannabinoid that will overdose you, make you feel paranoid, scared, and so on.
You're talking about sativa now?
THC.
With high THC is which strain?
Rick's Prep is a high THC prep.
Okay.
Yeah. But Rick recommends it to be made from indicas, which are sedative. Okay. You wouldn't want to make one of Rick's Preps from a sativa. It won't be as effective that way. What I am encouraging here is utilizing your hemp flower for the cannabidiol that's present in that. It can be easily turned and activated into a highly efficacious, meaning desired effect, prep for oral consumption. And it can be standardized so the amount of CBD per dose is known. Also, you can extract it into what's called a Phoenix Tears Rick Simpson type concentrate of cannabidiol oil from your hemp plants here. You don't need to grow the high THC strains unless you are wanting THC. I am an advocate and a purveyor of cannabidiol as being what I see to be the most medicinal of the cannabinoids. THC has its purpose and its place, but CBD is even broader in its efficacy, and that's where I'm focusing my research right now. The reason I'm here to talk to your hemp farmers.
Yes. And regarding side effects and overdose?
Overdose. The biggest problem with overdose is someone eating an unstandardized brownie. That's the way it most often happens where I come from. Somebody will take an oral dose, a cookie or a brownie, they don't know how much THC is in it, and an hour later they're going through what we call the pinhole. Or it's an overdose where you get, it can be one of the most frightening experiences you could have. You'll know you're going to die, but you won't. But it can be a terribly paranoid, frightening, I got to get out of here experience. But there's never been a recorded death from THC or cannabis overdose. You will come down in 4 to 5 hours. That's the most important thing to remember. If you do start to spin out or get afraid, remember that you will come down again in 4 hours, 5 hours, you'll be normal. Try to be with someone you trust to talk you down. You can squeeze a lemon, drink some lemon juice, take a handful of pine nuts, calamus root or black pepper are all good antidotes to THC overdose. But this won't happen with cannabidiol. CBD you can take a gram per kilogram body weight sort of, so you can take very large amounts without toxic effects. Mm-hmm. It's THC that is the bugbear in cannabis medicine because of the psychotic event, which you will survive, but it can scare you. Mm-hmm. And what I have made mistakes doing many times is overdosing people with their first oral dose, and it scares them so they won't go back to the oral dose. And they'll miss out on all that possible pain relief they could have. So it's very important to start small with oral dosing and build up. And I always recommend, particularly with children, is that you watch their eyes an hour after you've dosed them. Because you can tell whether the THC is actually affecting them. You can tell by their eye movement, mm-hmm. whether they're focusing or they're not. And then you want to note that dosage, because that's where they're being affected, and keep it at that sort of dosage.
We have many children with epilepsy today as a consequence of vaccination, as we know. And I read that cannabis oil is very, very effective in treatment of epilepsy. So
it's important to note the cannabidiol content of those oils. A high THC oil can actually make seizures worse.
Oh, okay.
You want to make sure that it's a high CBD oil.